One game that has really stuck with me, and I think a lot of people since completing the final episode of it, is Dispatch. This superhero story involves Robert Robertson, a character also known as the superhero Mecha Man. He is a character without powers. He is a character that many find very relatable, and that's what I wanted to talk about for a few minutes today, is why people relate so much to Robert, why he is such a good, I don't even want to say self-insert, but almost foil for a player to bounce off of, and why his narrative hits so close to home, especially for me. Now, obvious small disclaimer here, I am not claiming to be an engineer superhero when I say that this character relates to me heavily, or I relate heavily to this character, I should say. But I did just want to look at why people connect with him and why his writing, I think, is seen as so good to a lot of people. Now, before I hop a little further into this, I do actually have a question of the day, which is, what superhero character do you relate to the most? Like, maybe it's a sidekick, maybe it's a superhero, maybe it's whoever. Who do you relate to and why? Like, what about their narrative strikes a chord with you? Because I'd find that very interesting. Now, one of the primary things that we learn about Robert throughout his journey is that he is not the first Mecha Man. Not at all. In fact, it's a family tradition that's been passed down from his grandfather to his father and now to him. And he's also a character who, growing up, wanted to be like his dad, but didn't always understand his own father. And there are even dialogue choices in the game that very, very heavily imply this, that his relationship with his father was not bad, but not as close as he wanted it to be, and that his father was often off helping other people and not often at home, which is why Robert spent so much time with someone like Chase, who was also track star, when he was younger, because that was an older brother figure to him. And when Robert's father was busy off being Mecha Man the second, essentially, Robert was at home, kind of worried about his dad, lonely, and he seemed like a kid who didn't always connect well with others. I mean, really the only friend we're shown and told about from his younger years is Chase. Now, sadly, tragedy did strike eventually when Robert's father was murdered by the supervillain known as Shroud, which leads to the story of Dispatch, where Robert has been Mecha Man III for a handful of years now, and he is basically trying to avenge his father, whether it be through the path of justice, almost like a righteous vengeance where you're trying to find the person who did something bad and put them away, or if it's more violent and personal, and that really depends on how you play the game. Which I think is one of the first things that really connects with people, is the amount of choices that you have as Robert does mirror real life in many ways. There are so many ways that you can take tragedy, there are so many ways you can go. There are ways to bury your problems in drugs, alcohol, sadness, sex, whatever. Gambling, you know, maybe the one that you might actually win something out of in terms of destructive habits. You probably won't though. There are many ways that you can go down a negative path or a path of anger when tragedy strikes. And I think that many people do this. And even people who don't do this feel a similar pain to what Robert feels when they see him sitting in his empty apartment alone and directionless. And this is where this character relates heavily to me as well. I am someone who has struggled with many things that this game does go into detail on and are central parts of this character. And now again, everybody's personal story is going to be different, but I'm just going to tell you why this character meant so much to me on a personal level, and then we could probably circle back to some more generic or general things, I should say, that can relate to other people as well. Growing up, for me, I always wanted to be just like my dad. And it was kind of hard to do because my dad was a complicated person. And I don't mean that I didn't like him. I don't mean that I thought he was a bad person. What I mean is that he was someone that I couldn't fully understand. It's interesting because these ways that we have relationships with our parents, even psychologically speaking, have often been studied by people, and they are ideas that we carry through our lives, even to other people. Even something like religion. A lot of people view what their idea is of religion partially based off of how they viewed their parents. Now, not everybody, but it is something that definitely happens. or you hear about someone having daddy issues or mommy issues. Those are things that actually persist through life and continue on into adulthood. In fact, I knew a family member who was actually getting into counseling and receiving counseling at the age of 75, I believe, who all of a sudden realized that he had a lot of stuff going on from his childhood and from high school even that he never really thought through or worked through that had affected his entire life. And this is something that we see in a character like Robert. We see this lack of understanding of his father, but a desire to be his father's son. It's something that I personally felt growing up quite a bit as I watched my dad, and I wanted to be the same type of man that he was. But there were things that he did or was interested in that I wasn't or didn't understand. There were times when I felt like he was gone at work or emotionally absent, and I didn't know what to do because of the age discrepancy and because of the relationship. But in about 2017, after I had finally gotten a lot closer with my father over the previous 5 years and bonded with him, ironically over video games, playing things like Fallout and Elder Scrolls and RPGs like that an older person can actually comprehend that are not super fast reaction time based things. Ironically and tragically, around 2017, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And there was a long time where my father's health declined, and I knew that he wouldn't be around forever. Similar feelings, I'm sure, to what someone like Robert felt every time that his father went out to help others and he didn't know if he'd come back, and one day he didn't. One day, after a failing, terrible, terrible stretch of health, going through chemotherapy and watching him rot away, my father passed in 2019. And I was left directionless. I was left wanting to be my father's son, wanting to be the type of man that he would have been proud of, but not knowing how. And this is a burden that a character like Robert carried with him, was wanting to be his father's son, wanting to be the best Mecha Man he could be, and wanting to help others, even if it hurt him sometimes. But he wasn't perfect at it. He stumbled, he fell, he burned through his family's entire inheritance due to the amount of money it took to actually keep Mecha Man going, and he was not a technical marvel in terms of engineering genius. He is a very good engineer, able to repair his own suit as long as it's not completely destroyed, but at the end of the day, he can't replicate some of the technology that originally created Mecha Man. And so, one day, when his suit is irreparably destroyed, at least to his understanding, he is left even more directionless. And you have to remember, this is a character who pushed everyone away after the death of his father, even his friend Chase, who wanted to be there for him, but Robert didn't let him. It's something that I think a lot of us do during grief, is distance ourselves from others, and some people continue to do it for their entire lives. Watching a character like Robert sulk in his room, laying among the remains of what the second Mecha Man suit was after its destruction, watching him attempt to find meaning at a job that he felt at first didn't give him that meaning because he wanted to be a superhero again. They're things that I relate to heavily. Distancing people after my father's passing. Searching for meaning, searching for jobs, searching for something that would make it feel better, but nothing did. Years before my father's passing, I was diagnosed with a couple of rare disorders that cause extreme chronic pain. Unfortunately, this causes me to be in pain pretty much every second of every day, just to different degrees. And when that happened, I began to lose my armor. I began to be stripped away of my strength and felt that I could no longer provide the things that people around me needed. I felt worthless, and I felt like my purpose was gone, and I didn't know why I was still here. After Robert's armor was destroyed, he's essentially forced to parade himself in front of the press and give an update on what happened and what the future of Mecha Man is. And during the time where I was diagnosed, when my health was failing and Honestly, unfortunately, it has continued to see very steep declines in recent years at different times, but when it first happened, and my strength started to leave me and I started to lose my own armor, this was probably the hardest time for me, was having to face everyone. All of the questions, all of the, what happened to the active young man that you were? You used to be so strong. Going from that to being laid up in a chair for 6 months. Robert was forced to confront his humanity. He was forced to confront that underneath all of the tech, underneath the suit, there was a man who didn't have as much physical strength as he did with this armor. Subsequently, he was able to meet Blonde Blazer, who did help him find employment at SDN, which eventually, as we all know from the story, would lead to him finding purpose through being a dispatcher and through meeting actual friends and mentoring a team of young people who needed him. Robert began to regain his strength physically and mentally during this time through both hard work physically, working out, and also through trying to connect with people again. And depending on how you play the game, Robert can find connection emotionally and, I would say, romantically with someone like Courtney, who's Invisigal, or Mandy, who is Blonde Blazer. And I personally don't think that there is a wrong choice here. And that's something I'd like to talk about actually in a future video. With Blazer, it really does come down to two people who were seen as a hero, but there's a lot more underneath that they're still trying to grapple with and understand and come to terms with and really be okay with who they are. But with Invisigal, it's also someone who equally, I would say, really needed someone like Robert in her life, someone who was also damaged like she was, where they could help each other pick up the pieces. And because of that, I say there's no wrong choice. And these are actually elements that I see as well, both of these characters, in the relationship I formed with my wife, Jill, who I met when I was at my lowest. Now, a lot of people will tell you things like, you won't find love until you're not looking for it, or, oh, you have to be in a really, really good place emotionally to be able to handle a relationship. And yes, there are more ideal circumstances for people, but like Robert and Courtney, or even Robert and Mandy, there are times where someone is at their lowest and they do need someone else. And it's not parasitic, it's symbiotic. It's a relationship that builds both people up. Like Robert, in recent years I have tried very hard to find another purpose other than just physical strength. And one of those purposes I found was doing YouTube, was sharing stories with people, because growing up I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be someone strong, like a first responder. And as my health failed, it was clear that that wasn't really something that was in the cards for me. But I've begun to retake control to the best of my ability of my own destiny. Even through doing YouTube, there have been so many years where things got worse and worse, and when I was succeeding, I'm now basically failing in comparison. And it took so long to enter a place where I could start to see my self-worth outside of these professions, outside of these things, and yet continue to do them. And this is something that a lot of people connect with Robert on, whether it's dealing with the depression, whether it's dealing with the loss of purpose, whether it's dealing with trying to navigate new relationships, new friendships, a new job. This is a character that connects with everyone. He's not perfect. He's not as smart as Iron Man. He can't fix his own suit all the time, even if it's, torn down to shreds. He's not as rich as Batman. He doesn't have infinite resources. He is, at the end of the day, a human trying to do right by the image of his father, trying to do right by those around him, and trying to do right by the name that was passed to him. This is something that I think anyone can relate to, whether they've had circumstances like mine that in many ways parallel the struggle that Robert went through. Obviously not to the same particulars, but in terms of themes. Or it's someone with empathy who can see the character and understand what he's going through. Maybe you found love in a place that you didn't expect, like the workplace with Robert. Or maybe you didn't and you just found purpose, like you can choose to do in this game as well, pushing away that kind of connection but still maintaining other connections. There's no right answer, really, when it comes to dealing with some of these problems, but we can see a lot of those answers, possibilities, and situations in the life of someone like Robert Robertson, and that's why I think Mecha Man means so much to me. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, please let me know. I'd love to tackle the other characters. I've done character analysis and I've done analysis of themes and things like that before. I did go to school for this. It's one of the few things that I get to use my degree for, but also, there are other people doing similar videos to this. Like I know my friend Alex from Podcast Now has been dropping some character analyses and things like that, which I think are great. This is a game that I absolutely love and I want to talk more about in the future, and I would love to hear ideas from you on what to talk about. Also, if you want to support this channel further, you can use code DJAY123 on Fortnite. That always helps us out a lot. Or check out our store, cosmobunny.shop. We really appreciate that. Tiny little plug here. We do one-of-a-kind items made out of recycled comics, manga, magazines, and more that have been damaged, and we actually turn those into resin coasters, keychains, and trays for your home. We don't print images. We always transformatively use books that cannot be sold, that have been damaged, and we turn them into a piece of something new. I hope you have a great day today, and thank you for watching this more personal video to me. And as always, everyone, stay shui.